Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and welcome to the show where apparently the editor picks the music and the co-host shuts his K-hole.
Yeah, so I
Bradley
wanted that
did
to be
not
a
tell me.
surprise.
He did not tell me.
It was so funny. I almost thought about not telling you, like, at all, like, in general. Like, I was just going to be, like, not say anything, and then you'd be like, huh? I do want to give a shout out to the artist, Jeremy Moran's music on YouTube. I reached out to him because I found this club mix of the Niamos track that he remixed. And so I was like, can I use this on my podcast? And he was like, sure, let me know when the episode drops. And I was like, you got it, dude. So shout out to you,
Jeremy. Thank you for the sick ass music. It really does fit our vibe.
I know. Like, and you know what? It's going to make a lot more sense in the next episode, but
it's going to make a lot more sense why it fits our vibe. Oh, we'll talk about that moment personally attacked me on next episode, but we're not there yet. We are living in a wonderful era, Bradley.
What's that?
An absolutely beautiful one where these shows have stopped coming.
Oh, I thought you meant in real life. And I was like, okay.
Oh no, we're living in a shit ass era in real life. Admittedly, one of the better eras of human history, which is really fucking sad because we have penicillin now. However, in terms of Star Wars for you and I, we're living in a pretty great era for your editing because news doesn't really come out because there isn't really anything coming until next year.
Yeah, we never have to really worry now about, oh no, they're not talking about spoilery whatever movie XYZ or rumor this, rumor that.
Or now we have to talk.
There is no rumors.
Yeah, and that's part of the funny thing that I think we're actually starting to see now. The clickbait is so desperate for clickbait that there's one account on Threads that I watched delete and repost the same story with the same social text like 4 times.
Interesting.
In a week. They just kept deleting it and reposting it, trying to get engagement on it. And it was funny too, because every time I would see it, the engagement had dropped.
Yeah, because I guess people just don't care, or like it just doesn't, you know.
It's harder to push it out to people. Andor's hard to do like clickbait for. But then I also think that without the deluge of news too, they're really struggling with their news cycle.
Right.
So they're used to being fed this steady stream of rumors and clicks and leaks for the new thing that's coming up. Well, there's only like 3 new things that are coming up that we care about, which are the movie, the mall show, and Ahsoka season 2.
Right.
Everything else hasn't really started filming yet, so it doesn't count. And they are being tight-lipped about some of these. So I'll be curious to see what happens with the clickbait economy in the next couple of years. I hope Valnet chokes on its own spit and dies.
Okay.
For context, Valnet is the company that owns like Collider and Screen Rant and a whole bunch of these
I was like,
websites.
I don't think anybody knows who that is, but
yeah, okay. I've now made it my new. Do you remember how I used to make it my personal mission in life to like come after We Got This Covered?
Sure.
Which used to do, if you've not been following the podcast for 10,000 years, it used to do like this flat out lie on like, and it would push it out on Facebook, right? For a while, I was like, that was my personal mission, was to make sure everybody knew We Got This Covered as a bullshit rag for bullshit artists.
Right.
Well, my new personal mission in life is to make sure everyone knows that a lot of these clickbait sites are owned by a company called Valnet, and Valnet is a bunch of scum-sucking pieces of shit. That's my new mission in life. So if you're mad about clickbait, wonderful news. You can blame Valnet. Anyway, what are we talking about today, Bradley?
Today we're talking about Andor Season 2, Episode 2, Sagrona Teema. Cassian caught in a rebel turf war, Mon's wedding woes mount, and the Ferrix survivors face inspection. Charles, what's one thing you liked about the episode and one thing you did not?
One thing I liked about the episode was the Chandrillan costumes. I think we had even more costume changes this time around.
Sure did.
Really just everything about Chandrila. Like, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. They had the wonderful moment where they're going up the mountain, which was filmed on location, which is breathtakingly beautiful.
Ugh, gorgeous.
Like, oh my God. Like, I've been waiting to see Chandrila on screen for ages, and it's delightful. Also, watching this episode at the same time I'm listening to an audiobook that involves Chandrila being, like, attacked by a separatist bioweapon during the Clone Wars. This is Legends, so it doesn't count, but is actually crazy to my brain. One thing I didn't like about this episode, we didn't have a lot of these types of episodes this season. This episode, rewatching it back, kind of feels in retrospect like a moving pieces into place episode. I think it's sort of the most apparent of the episodes that I can think of for just trying to maneuver people into position so we can do a whole other episode
Right.
of something interesting. The only other one I can think is as bad of an offender is like episode 7, I want to say. The one right
Maybe.
before all hell breaks loose.
Again, we're gonna have to rewatch it because, yeah, I think this one for sure is the biggest offender. I'm not sure about the next arc. I can't quite remember what happens until we watch it. But this one was the one where I was like, oh,
I'm watching it right now with my boyfriend,
Yeah.
and it's the first Gorman one, the one where we're dealing with the Gorman resistance, and that whole arc is basically setting up
right, the second
things,
half.
but
Yeah,
it hides it much better than I think. This one,
I think
upon
so.
rewatch, is very, we need to hold Cassian so that he can't get involved in the plot. So we're going to have him go do this other plot for a while so
Right.
we can't get involved with the main plot. We need to set up the good guys on Mineral, and we also need to set up that fucking lieutenant guy. Like, we need to establish him ahead of time because
Yeah.
we're going to use him later. We need to set up stuff in the wedding because we're going to use it later. It's going to be important later. It's going to be important in the next one. So that was my one sort of issue going back and watching this back. What about you, Bradley? Your one thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I liked about this episode, I know I literally said the same thing. Which was that I love the Chandrillan costumes, like because something about like when Perrin's wearing that kimono giving a speech, I'm just like, it's so fucking detailed. Like there's so many details in all their costumes, and then like when they were hiking, all their hats, it's very Japanese inspired, and it's like it just looks so gorgeous and beautiful. And I can never, and the sets for Chandrilla are just so detailed. It blows my mind every time.
According to the StarWars.com trivia guide article,
Okay.
quote, hundreds of costumes, including jewelry and headwear, were created for the extras populating the Chandrillan wedding sequence, end quote.
I love that. It just looks so expensive, and it's
Cost so much fucking money, but it looks beautiful on
it looks
screen.
amazing. So I really loved that. The one thing I didn't like, and I think I told you this when I first watched it, and we kind of had this mini discussion off air about like the Cassian plotline for the first 3 episodes. And since the plotline is now done for technically for the first 3, because it only lasted the 2 episodes.
Yeah.
The Rebel Turf War plotline, I still hate it. It still can be removed, and nothing in the story changes whatsoever for the whole entire season.
Yeah, our chief disagreement off air was basically whether or not it would come back.
Yeah.
Whether or not it would literally matter at all to the plot of this. And for the entirety of the season, having now seen the entire season, because we have both watched the finale, and you will have to wait several months to find out what we thought of the finale unless you happen to follow me on social media, and then I just post my thoughts on there ahead of time. But yeah, this does not come back. This mainly exists within the context of the plot to do 2 things. It needs to illustrate that the rebels aren't ready for prime time, which it kind of has already done. It has achieved that. The other thing that it needs to do for the plot is keep Cassian away from Mineral.
Right.
Which there were several other ways I think we could have accomplished this. Because upon thinking about it, like, Cassian doesn't change much over the course of this arc of the plot. Cassian's mostly just kind of there. He doesn't learn anything from this. He doesn't grow. He doesn't fundamentally alter himself as a person or even minorly alter himself as a person. He's just sort of there.
Yeah, for a show named after him, it doesn't really involve him that much.
Well, we might get to it when we get to it, but I definitely have noticed a lot of season 2. Cassian Andor himself. This was also kind of a thing in season 1. He's an interesting character to make as the protagonist of your show because he's a very passive character.
Right.
He doesn't take the initiative a lot. Things happen to him. Well, I wouldn't say passive, but he's reactive. He doesn't tend to start the plot. The plot tends to happen to him. and he's just kind of there. And then he is slightly different at the end of it. And this one is probably one of the most offenders of Cassian is the most just kind of there.
Yeah, it is. I think that's like I think people's biggest critique of the show is that the show is not like it's called Andor, but it's not really about Andor. It's like he's kind of just like a passenger. He really is. I think it's more about the Rebel Alliance growing to reach the point in Rogue One. That's what the premise of the show is, I think, for the most part.
If
And then the fall of, being in fascism. But other than that,
I have a slightly wild pitch.
okay.
If the show had been 5 seasons and they had been able to stretch out and do more with the non-Cassian plot lines, they should have called the show Fulcrum.
Okay.
Because the fact that that Cassian is a Fulcrum agent doesn't get brought up in the show, probably because we don't have time. But I almost wonder if, like, the show being about him, that title might have given a broader sense of it being more about his role in the rebellion. And not
Maybe.
necessarily a character. The first season
Yeah.
felt very much like a character study of Cassian Andor.
Sure.
The second season feels like a story in which Cassian Andor is a character.
I think they should just change the name of the show and just been like, it's a different show. And it's not season 2 of Andor. It's just a different show. And then they
by
could have
that
called
point,
it
they
something
were
else.
pot committed.
Well,
They had
yeah,
already
I know,
called it that. But like, they also didn't know that, like, I'm sure they would have done more with Cassian if they had had time.
Oh, I'm sure.
But-
Yeah. I think I mean, you can see it. It's sprinkled in here. I think in every arc you can see what they were kind of going for, but it's just kind of like you couldn't get all the details because you didn't have 24 episodes to tell the story you wanted to, Tony. So unfortunately,
Tony thought he was going to have, what's 12 times 4? He thought he was going to have 48 more episodes of this show
right,
after season 1, and they got 12,
which is fine.
this is one of the, I've said a few times privately and on my social media and things that there are instances in which you can definitely like basically see the scarring on the bone from where they hacked this show down to fit into this box.
Right.
And I do think right up even at the top, before we even get into the details of the Cassian arc here and how other people make decisions for him. Other people put him in situations and he has to get out of it. I do think that the lack of those quiet Cassian moments from season 1 that really hammered home his journey, I think was one of the bigger casualties of that. But we should probably talk about what actually happens in this episode because we are recording on a weekday because Bradley is employed.
Section 1, Rebel Turf War. In the jungle, Cassian is still being held captive by one side of the band of rebels. Confusion and suspicion among the rebels grows as they can't find the bodies of their fallen comrades. Confusion and fear trigger a brief gunfight, and later the rebels argue about having to eat moldy rations. Cassian stays alert, noticing the perimeter has gone quiet, and Fleck claims he was about to check it. The other group of rebels outside reluctantly eat stinky fruit, emphasizing the group's need for food. The rebels continue to argue over resources and capabilities. One group has Cassian, while the rival group has the TIE fighter, but they don't have anyone to fly the ship. The rebel named Plug returns with alarming news. The rival rebel faction is using ropes and vines to manually reposition the TIE Avenger to aim its laser cannons at them. The rebels launch a blaster attack on the rival rebels, successfully driving them away from the TIE Avenger. Gertis and Barty argue over what to do with the captured pilot, and their group meet outside the camp to resolve their dispute through a game where the loser must submit. Left under one guard, Cassian disarms him, binds him, and escapes into the jungle. A wild creature rampages through the rebel camp mid-match, causing chaos. Cassian is able to reach the ship and take off. He flies over the temples, revealing the jungle planet to be Yavin 4.
Yeah, why don't they have a pilot, Bradley?
Because one of them murdered
Because
the
one of them
other. fucking
shot her.
Well, they're
Yeah.
not smart. I mean, that's the whole
They're
point
very
of this.
dumb.
The
They're
whole
very-
thing is that they're dumb.
honestly, I have a hot take for you, Bradley.
Okay.
Knowing that this plot goes nowhere,
Yes.
knowing that I do not have to care about these people, I kind of enjoyed watching them be shit at this more the second time.
The second time it wasn't as bad. I will give
Because
you
the first time I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we
Yeah,
setting
what
up?
is it supposed to
What
be?
are you
Yeah.
setting up, Tony? And now I'm just like, oh, okay, you just made your son and your nephew-in-law just be shitty at each other for an entire episode. This is kind of
yeah.
funny, actually.
I think I get what they were going for, right? Like I think what there was two separate situations happening here. I think the one situation was, yes, we're seeing, like you said, the rebels are not ready to fight the Empire. They're all in disarray or whatever, and none of them are connected, and none of them worked well together. Enough so that they even captured someone who's actively trying to help them become a rebel group and detained him for most of the time and almost killed him accidentally, right? The other thing that I don't know. Maybe it was just more of a coincidence that this is Yavin 4. I think there was something left off here. This is cutting room floor suspicion
I
right
agree.
here. There's something here that was not clearly shown to us.
There
that was
would
supposed to
have
be
been
important.
a scene. Yeah, there would have been a scene or something where Cassian goes back to Luthen and is like, "Hey, I found this place. It's called Yavin." And
Yep.
that sets up the rest of how important Yavin is to this season. And again, they had to hack this thing down to the bare
Yeah.
bones and then
This is one of the casualties.
polish
Right,
up
for sure.
again one of the casualties. It was very cool to see Yavin here, that he was crushed on Yavin the whole time. It didn't quite have the connective glue to get it
Right.
to the rest of the plot, which again, the particularly the fourth block of episodes, Yavin's going to be so important.
Yeah, and I just don't get it. It just like it doesn't make sense, and I need Tony to explain it to me why he thought these 2 episodes, this plot
Oh,
was
I'm
so
sure
important.
he'll explain it at some point. The man cannot stop giving interviews. He just does not give a fuck about talking in a good way, in a really good
Right,
way.
right, right.
Like he comes on and he says things in like interviews and stuff that I'm just like, oh, you were done with Star Wars in like the best way. Like one of the important ones is he flatly would go out. He gave an interview, like it dropped earlier today or yesterday or something. I read part of it. It was behind a fucking paywall where he was talking about like how hard Kathleen Kennedy championed for the show.
Yeah.
And to get them, to let them make their second season, to let them make the show in the first place, and to let him take the swings that people really like about the show. And he specifically references like, oh, everybody like says stuff on her online, but honestly, like she's the reason the show exists.
Yeah.
And like, good for you, Tony.
No, because I look, I don't have the same, work history that she does, obviously. But like, if someone were to come to me and say, "Hey, we want to make a show about the guy who dies in Rogue One," I'd be like, "No, we're not doing that. That's stupid. He's just a random spy character that no one gave a shit about. Like, we're not gonna do that. That's just like a one-off character."
Did we not think that this show was what that was pointless when it first was announced?
No, I think
Did we
one
not
of the things
think
we
this?
said was I think when this was first announced, we were like, okay.
Don't go
Like,
back and check our early episodes because our early episodes suck ass.
I don't even remember when it was first announced or what episodes it would have been in, but
It was announced in that god-awful investor call in 2021 when they dumped everything.
Yeah,
And it was
and
one
maybe
of the
that's why.
weirder shows that was announced. Anyway, I love that right off the bat, Cassian is immediately established from the first shot of the episode to be more competent than everyone else in the room, just by the fact that he is like drinking water, like rainwater. And then he has to like coach the rebels through.
Every time.
Every time he's like, you guys should set up some water. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
probably a good
Yeah,
idea.
you were totally about to do that? Yeah, that's a good idea. That's me in any of the management or leadership meetings at my job. Somebody will say, yes, this is also what I've been saying. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. You should do that. Mhm.
No, that's what he's been doing that the whole time. But it's funny that he does that because in just like terms of simple like survival techniques, right? Like obviously you're more likely you need water no matter what. You don't necessarily need food. Yes, you'll starve, you'll be hungry, but you can last longer.
Food.
Right.
Yeah, you can last
So-
longer without food than without water.
Right. And so his
So-
thing was like, yeah, you guys should probably start
These
collecting water
people,
if you don't have
these
any
people
food.
are obsessed with food.
They really
This
are.
comes up over and over and over again in this episode. They are obsessed with food. They completely forgot to collect water.
I also we're jumping around, but there's the part where they're talking about the moldy rations, and the one guy suggests Cassian eat the moldy rations to see if it's okay, right? And I thought about that, and I was like, you dumb fuck, he's the pilot you need. Like, so why would you test the poisonous food
Because they're dumb
theoretically on the pilot?
fucks.
I know, it's so funny. Every moment that they have with some of these rebels, it's great because they all do silly things that they don't make sense.
One minor thing I did notice in the subtitles, somebody says Ichuta.
Oh, I
Which-
didn't catch that.
Yeah, I know we swear a lot on the podcast. That probably is the worst thing that I have to say sometimes on air, which of course that was one of my favorite exchanges from The Empire Strikes Back, the Ichuta, how rude. So every time somebody says that line, I'm like, how rude in my head. Yeah, these people are just like not good at finding food, which I found hilarious, which I thought was really interesting because you would think that rebels who have been engaged in missions would know how to do this stuff. That is Wilderness Survival 101.
That's
That's
true.
Operational Security 101. Form a
Although
perimeter.
to defend them only slightly, I don't know how much of a perimeter you can set around one crash ship and one TIE fighter that's only a couple 100 feet away. Like, you know
Well,
what I
a
mean? They're
very small perimeter because they only have to do it around the ship.
right.
And you really can do it from inside the ship. You just a perimeter. You want visuals on the entire outside of the ship so that they don't sneak up
Sure.
on you.
You know what? I think this does come up slightly later because he tells him to set up the perimeter. He's like, I'm gonna do it. And then he does it. I assume they do it because later on the other group, they're like, wait, how do they know that we're doing it? Oh, they're spying on us, is what they say. Like something along the lines of like that. Like I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but they're talking at night and they're like discussing, and then they're like, well, how would the other group even know that? And it's like because they were listening to us because they snuck up close to us to find out. And so I guess that was them setting up the perimeter and being able to
Or
do
they
that.
use you. They use their eyeballs. Like
Oh, that
these
too. Yeah.
people are so dumb.
Right.
Actually, speaking of these people being dumb, the plan to move the TIE fighter.
Honestly, I'm not mad at that plan as much as I am some of the other plans.
Here's why that's a fucking terrible plan.
Why is that?
Because what's going to happen.
Oh, well,
I understand the logic
the logic,
behind
yes.
if we can just turn the TIE fighter, we can shoot the ship. Well, never mind, you're going to be killing the pilot if you do that.
Well, we ignore that part of the plan,
Also,
but yeah.
how do you know how to fire the TIE fighter? Are you just going to go in there and start randomly mashing buttons?
I
How
guess
do
they
you
were
know
kind
that's
of doing
going to
that,
work?
yeah.
How do you know it's not going to activate a self-destruct or something?
That's true.
But here's why this plan is incredibly stupid, and here's why anyone worth their salt would have told you that that's a bad idea. Also, I do not buy for a fucking second. I didn't do the math on this because I wasn't being paid for it, and therefore I don't do math. I don't buy for a fucking second they're going to get it in range by nightfall. I think Cassian's full of shit when he says that.
Well, yeah, because I think they were trying to do math and they were like, oh, well, if you can move it a few centimeters every, hour or whatever, then it'll eventually and he was like, yeah, they're basically going to get it by the end of the night, so you
He's
guys got to really
bullshitting.
be,
There's no
yeah,
fucking way.
no,
But here's the thing, right? In order to move this TIE fighter at the optimal speed, you have to dedicate all hands to doing it.
right.
And when you dedicate all hands to moving the TIE fighter, you know what you don't have hands to do?
Protect your group, I guess.
Protect your group. This was
Yeah.
a very, very, very fucking stupid plan. And it goes predictably as bad as you would think it is.
But what I like from Cassian from this moment, though, is that he's thinking in his way, I just got to get one of the sides to win because whoever wins is going to try to keep me anyway, theoretically, right? So they just got to he's just like, I just got to speed this along so that they take each other out at least or something, right? And then there's less people for him to go after when he has to kind of make a move, which does work.
Well, I also love how, like, none of them think to go out into the jungle slightly and just kind of sneak over. Like in the opening shot of the episode, they're crawling across the muddy field to find, like, bits of the pilot.
Yeah.
None of them thought of, like, maybe going around.
I guess just because they've been shooting at each other, so they just
Is
don't
Cassian
really,
the first and only person to think of, like, the only person to think of going around? Because that's what he
Yes.
ultimately does.
Yeah, you're right, because he runs into the
The
jungle. to
minute
kinda
they're
avoid
distracted,
everybody.
he runs into the jungle and
Mhm.
sneaks around. And he's not the one that gets gored by the Doodar.
That's right.
He's not gored by them. It's the dumbasses standing out in the middle of an open field that are gored by that animal.
And I guess we just assume they all eventually die, right? Like there's no
Yeah, there's no mention of them ever again. We just
Right.
sort of assume that they die.
Yeah, they either starve to death or they take each other out, I would assume. I mean,
Yeah,
I
they're
don't
all dead.
know. Yeah, so
None of them make it.
Oh.
I love how it literally just devolves into the two guys shouting at each other.
yeah, playing like rock paper scissors or
Okay,
something like.
so that when that happened,
Yes.
when that happened the first time, because I was kind of meh on the arc even the first time I watched it. I was
Yeah.
a little defensive of it because I wanted to see where it was going. The rock paper scissors bit, rather like the final scene of the ungodly terrible last season of Elite, was almost funny enough to make the entire plot line worth it. That was so fucking funny that it literally just devolves into rock, paper, scissors.
I mean, it actually kind of makes sense if you think about it because like these guys are so immature that they can't come together as a group. So they come up with the most immature way to solve their leadership problem, which is to play a fucking game of rock, paper, scissors, essentially to pick their leader. They're like, well, whoever wins this, is gonna be the one to lead us, obviously, because they're so good at one stupid game. Like it's just so silly. I love it, honestly. And now you're making me appreciate this dumb rebel group more.
They're so stupid, and it's so funny to watch them be stupid.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
Fun fact about Five Hands, which is the game that they're playing. So, Five Hands, according to Secrets from the Set of Andor, the trivia guide that I am using,
Okay.
quote, as the character of Gertis grew, Sam Gilroy crafted the Star Wars spin on the hand game by not only introducing alternative gestures, but adding several layers of complexity. In Five Hands, there are 15 animal gestures, including Rancor, Snork, and Snozbird, which are displayed by two players in 3 rounds overseen by a referee, end quote. So Sam Gilroy actually, the blonde guy, actually created like the
The
rules
game.
of this game,
That's really funny, actually.
which is very, very cool.
And now nerds at Star Wars Celebration are gonna play this game.
You
And
are
there's gonna be
absolutely going to see
matches
somebody
and
playing this game. I'm sure there will be extended rules that are released at
tournaments.
some point. I would look, I think this would be funny to watch. It's
It would
funny
be
to watch
funny.
in the show. A shortened version of this is the Roski rules. That's what they mean by the Roski rules, apparently, according to the
Oh,
trivia
so
guide.
there's only like 3 animals instead of whatever.
Yeah, I guess there's like the more complex version of the game, and then there's a simpler shortened version used to resolve disputes, which is the version that they're playing.
Oh, okay. It's like rock, paper, scissors instead of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, whatever. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like, right. You just lessen it to make it more simple. So that's really funny, actually. Love that.
So the animal is called a Dudar.
Oh, okay.
It is named after its designer, Alexander Dudar.
Nice.
Anyway, we got to talk about the fact that they were on Yavin 4 the whole time. Although I think we've already kind of covered this,
I
like
think
the
so,
reaction to
yeah.
this of like very fun to see on screen,
Right.
missing some crucial connective tissue to the rest of the plot.
I think what was missing was the plot of the rebels maybe survived and established a key like point there, and then that was just not brought back up, right? Like this was the origin, this terrible discombobulated group of rebels on Yavin was the origin of the super
Yeah, like
complex group that is
some
now,
one guy managed to get a signal out to Luthen or something. Like
exactly the
it
last one
missed a
standing.
little bit of connection to, because it could have been so cool. It could have been so cool to be like, this
Yeah.
is how Yavin was discovered. We're missing just a tiny little bit of connective tissue to explicitly say that somebody brought this to Luthen, and that's why they start building the Yavin base, which is so important in the back half of this season.
Yeah, I just wish we would have gotten it because I think they even sprinkled it in the first episode because they say the one guy was like, "Oh yeah, my brother left to go get us help or go get something or whatever," and then he was gonna come back and rescue us. And it's
Yeah,
like,
that's the argument is the guy's
right,
brother left and they don't know if he deserted or not, and we never really get an
right,
answer on that. So like, yeah, also the brother could have like come back
right.
and
Who
figured out what
knows?
happened, or like the brother could be like somebody that we know, or
There will be a comic at some
I
point
am
that will
sure there will be a
explain.
comic or a rep. Pablo Hidalgo will fix it.
There you go.
I think we had way more to say about that subplot than
I
actually
know.
happens in that subplot of relevance to the overall meta plot of the show.
Section 2, Deedra's Dilemma. On Coruscant, Deedra tells Major Partagaz she doesn't want the Gorman project, preferring to focus on Axis. Partagaz reminds her that Krennic assigned the project and this decision is final. He assures her that Gorman isn't a demotion and encourages her to seek it as an opportunity. Nearby, at the Imperial Bureau of Standards, Cyril is now working there and gives a motivational talk to a new employee. He uses his story to inspire the nervous recruit, suggesting that ambition and courage can lead to success in the Bureau. Later, Deedra is in her apartment when Cyril arrives, indicating that they are now in a relationship.
So I find it interesting when this scene with Deidre and Partagaz start that one of the overall themes of this scene, and one of the overall themes that really comes through with Deidre's character, is that she is somebody that has wants and ambitions and things that she wants to do. The problem is she is part of the machine here, and the machine does not care.
Right.
The machine has a job it needs you to do. It doesn't care what you want to do or what you're necessarily going to be good at. Because Dedra's really good at the Axis desk. She's really good at it. And we've seen in season 1, she got the closest as anybody did to actually catching Axis. But they need her to run the Gorman project, so she's going to run the Gorman project. And I think that is interesting.
Yeah, it's like you can't be a cog in the machine with like and try to not be a cog in the machine. Like it's like
You
you
don't
can't
pick where you are in the machine.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's not a thing you get to decide. And she kind of has this moment where she's trying to not get Gorman, but Partagaz, he's such a piece of shit this season.
He's so interesting as a character, honestly.
He is
Like,
so interesting because he's like trying to convince her this is not a demotion with this is very obviously a demotion.
right,
Because he also says to her, like, maybe next time you catch the guy and then make him famous.
right.
Because clearly she's done stuff that they don't agree with the Axis desk. But also, like, he's trying to spin it to her as this is not an emotion. He's like, he's really good at manipulating his subordinate into believing that he supports them and is doing the right thing for them when really he's just maneuvering them into doing whatever he wants. And Deedra needs positive reinforcement. He's clocked this. So he's saying, it's not an emotion. It's really good for your career, actually. You go do this. Krennic will like you. Everything you're doing is like building a future for yourself. In reality, they just need somebody on Gorman.
Right. They just need a person. Like, because honestly, at this point, Krennic can do whatever he wants. He doesn't need anybody. Like, he can just, that's literally what he's doing. And he's just assigning people to things and just being like, I mean, I'm going to take the full credit for this in the end. I just need bodies, like, just to do stuff for me. And that's what she is. She's just kind of like this leader or this person in the Empire that nobody really wants to work with. And so it's kind of like, well, no one really will know about this, so I can use her.
Yeah. And also, like, Partagaz is very much somebody that's like claiming credit for things that work and assigning blame for things that don't.
Right.
But he's really good at making other people feel like he's assigning them the credit. We're going to see this later in a particular scene in episode 5 between Partagaz and Cyril and Deedra, where Partagaz is the type of person that can make anybody feel like, you are so special. You are one of my elite employees. Go do what I want, please. Which is, it's so painfully accurate.
Yeah.
I've worked for bosses like this.
And what's weird is like, I think she sees him as like being on her side too. Like
Absolutely.
She's just like, so like, oh my God, he trusts me. He wants me to grow in the Empire. He wants me to do all these things. But the problem is she's not a good cog. She is a bad cog, actually, because
and also,
she's too much ambition.
She has too much ambition, and he doesn't really want her to grow. He wants to use her to forward his own ends and the ISB's own end, which is why she's being pulled off Access and being reassigned to Gorman.
Yeah, and the thing with Partagaz too is that he doesn't even necessarily believe Access is real. Like, that's what's so crazy is like, because I think he says in this scene where he's like, if he even exists, like you've been going after him all this time. He's like, let it go. Like, we don't even know if he's a real person or not, or if he's just an idea. And that's what's so funny about all of it.
We have got to talk about the scene in which Cyril lectures some fresh out of college twink.
Oh my God, Cyril.
About the Bureau of... Cyril is such a little weasel.
Oh my God, he pisses me off so much.
He's such a greasy little shit. He wants to be respected so badly.
Yeah.
Like, he desperately wants to be respected. It's so funny. And so he's literally like lecturing some 23-year-old about how special their Bureau of Standards job is.
Like, he makes himself seem so much more important than he is, because he's just like, yeah, I was watching these shipping lanes and I noticed that 2 of them were wrong and somebody was stealing from the Empire and I'm the one who stopped the injustice.
I'm so cool and badass and I'm
like,
it's the same shit he was doing on Morlana 1.
He's just changed the face of the thing that he's doing. He's still
turned
doing the
the
same
Bureau
thing.
of Standards into the same thing he did as a corporate cop.
Exactly. And
which is really fucking funny.
This poor kid is like, I just want to go to my 9 to 5 every day. Like, I do not care. Like,
it's amazing.
He's like, I don't think there's that much action here at the Bureau of Standards, but
the Imperial
okay.
Bureau of Standards
right,
fuel parody.
Oh my God, it's too much. But none of that compares the final scene of Deedra in her apartment.
So she's standing around listening to like opera.
Which is such a villain thing to do. I mean, you just...
So my note was going to be that I do that.
Oh, I was going to say it's like traumatic villain who is like just they sit there and listen to opera like a creep like all the time.
Wow, okay. Maybe I'm the villain. No, it's so hilarious. It's
No, but
so hilarious.
it is.
The fact that Cyril comes over because they're apparently a thing.
I remember watching this the first time being like,
What the fuck?
huh? Like, I get it, Tony, that you had to squeeze a lot of plot into these couple episodes, but them going from him just kind of casually saving her life, like, to now they're full
They're
blown
a couple
fucking,
now.
like,
There are a couple now who absolutely is established by the next block of episodes do fuck. This is
I don't like it.
this is another victim of the show being truncated.
Yes.
Because this is a relationship that very badly needed more nuance. Like
Yeah, I
we
just
get
can't
the
believe
high
it.
point in the way that Denisco and Cal Solar choose to play these characters, and in what we've got and where we know the show is going. I think we get enough to understand the toxicity of this relationship, but
We don't see enough of it.
we don't see enough of it. And there's stuff she's gonna do in later episodes that does imply to me that I think she kind of has actual genuine feelings for him, but I don't know if they're romantic.
I know. I feel like
I
it's
don't know
more of
what's going on here.
the way I read it is that it's more of a
Because I don't think
symbiotic
she's,
thing.
I don't think she's just using him. I think
No.
there's more to this choice, but we don't get how she went from creepy stalking weirdo
I
to this dude's in my apartment.
I think that the only thing I can think to like attribute to this is that it's like the only thing that she has control over in her life is Cyril. Like she can tell him what to do, she can make him do things, and he will listen to
Oh,
her.
that's a good point.
And like she doesn't have control in other aspects of her life. She doesn't have control in her job because she's being assigned the Gorman project. She doesn't have control because she's been demoted. The whole Ferrix thing was a fucked up mess. Like Cyril is like the one thing that she knows that like because he's so desperate for that approval and attention that she can give that to him. And then it's like I can control him. I can make him do things.
My read on it too was that because she will talk in a later episode about her upbringing, like being very strict and regimented. She grew up in a very like regimented environment, and then she's working in this very patriarchal system. And that is pretty explicit in the tech. All the ISB officers who are not Deedra are men.
Right.
And like they have lines about it in the first season. It's pretty abundantly clear. There's I can't remember if it's this episode or a later episode. There's like a sexist little moment that is blink and you miss it, but if you know, you know, like in the ISB. So it's entirely possible too that she just doesn't recognize that Cyril's a walking red flag. Now, mind you, she's also a giant walking red flag, but I think there may be an element of she just doesn't have the capacity to recognize how dangerous he actually could be. I think she thinks he's a spineless little twerp.
Right.
And
But
I don't think
underneath,
she
there's something else, yeah.
recognizes that there may be problems later, like the giant walking red flag that this guy is, because she's never been in an environment where the idea of the things he does being toxic has ever been brought up to her. Because, like, I don't think we see that she doesn't seem to really have any friends outside of work, and she's around men all day.
Well, I mean, she does just
real
sit there
frame
and
of
listen to
reference.
opera music all day, so she doesn't have any friends.
That clearly she doesn't have any friends. Yeah, this is another dig about the fact that I like to put on classical music sometimes in the apartment, huh?
There you go.
Okay, okay, sure. You know what? I accept the dig. I accept the dig.
Section 3, Wedding Woes. At the Mothma estate on Chandrilla, preparations are made for a feast. Luthen discusses the next steps with Clea, and she reports no contact from Bix and notes Minarao is down due to Imperial inspection. She must head back to Coruscant for further recon. Perrin enters the room with Mon and discusses Luthen's expensive gift. He then teases her about a romantic relationship with Tay Kolma. She denies it, and Perrin is skeptical and warns her to be careful as Tay was a bit drunk the night before. Later, a wedding hike ensues with the two joining families. Mon walks with Vel and recalls her own wedding hike in the rain with Perrin, and Vel expresses concern over not hearing from Cinta and frustration with Luthen's secrecy. That night, during the festivities, Mon finds Tay, and they discuss the Foundation, reporting that Mon's financial irregularities have been cleaned up. Tay goes on to confide that the rebel activity has damaged his investments and expresses feeling undervalued. Mon promises to handle it over the weekend, and back on Coruscant, Clea enters Antiquities Gallery. She accesses a hidden listening device and begins intelligence gathering. Later, Luthen finds Mon and they discuss Tay's problems. Luthen worries Tay might switch loyalties. Mon tries to leave to hear Perrin's speech, but Luthen pushes her to finish dealing with the situation. Perrin delivers a formal speech at the wedding celebration, saying it's his duty to greet you, Sagrona, to toast to your health, Sagrona Teema, and ends with a toast offering hope for his child's future.
There's a lot in here.
This is, I mean, this is the biggest section of the episode. So this
is
is
the
why,
biggest section of the episode.
It really is. There's a lot. Yeah.
I love that we get the little line about how she's not eating, that Perrin just sort of assumes that she ate already. We, of course, know from the Mask of Fear she probably didn't eat because she has no stomach.
That's right. She does not. She doesn't have a human stomach.
She does not have a human stomach. It's mostly mechanical.
That's a mechanical stomach, yes.
From that time she did the spoiler thing she does at the end of the Mask of Fear, that this is not the Mask of Fear review, so I'm not going to spoil it. I did look up the Shandy Merle. We'll talk a little more about it next week, but I do want to just mention that it's not really a reference in and of itself to anything that I could find. Its backstory is a reference to something, and we'll get to that, but the actual name itself is not. I find Perrin's reaction to the fact that Mon might be banging Tay Kolma to be really fascinating because he doesn't seem that annoyed by it.
Yeah, he's more like, I think he's more annoyed that she's not admitting to it than she is.
I think beyond that, I don't think he dislikes Tay because of that. I think he flat out says he dislikes Tay for being weak.
Right. He thinks he's just not like a strong person.
He's got this patriarchal, like strength equal. If you're not strong, if you're weak, then you are lesser than.
Which I guess is prominent in this culture. We've started getting bits and pieces of the Chandrilan culture, and it's very patriarchal to the point to where it's like men are making these decisions and they are the
We will get to the fucking wedding ceremony when we get to it.
But yeah.
Yeah, he almost seems like he would be fine with it if she would just tell him.
Right. I think that's more about what it is too, because it's like, I don't care that you're fucking other people. Yeah, he's like, I don't care about the fact that you're fucking other people. I just want to know, like, that he actually is the guy you're fucking. You know what I mean? Like, that's not me.
Well, to be fair, if you're going to have some sort of polyamorous or open relationship, and I know this because I have one, it is very, very, very important that you maintain constant communication with your partner and or partners about who else might be involved in the picture. That is a healthy way to do that. That is healthy for a number of reasons. It keeps good communication open with you and a romantic partner or partners. And it's a health thing. Like, you want to know that information. So just a little bit of real life advice if you are the type of person that might find yourself in a polyamorous or otherwise open situation. Communication is key to making that work.
Also, I think that there's also probably a double standard here, whereas I feel like Perrin wants to know that she's doing this with Tay, but he would never tell her that he's doing stuff with other people. Like, I feel like this may or may not come up in the finale.
This may or may not come up in the finale.
We'll talk about it when we get there because it was such a left field thing, and I don't want to bring it up now because we talk about it for an hour, but I just like
I do not want to spoil reactions.
Yes.
I have been very careful. I have not said anywhere what I thought of that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he also brings up, like, again, the Chandrilan wedding kind of being this, like, social show of strength, right? Mm-hmm. That you have to learn to pace yourself. And he doesn't respect Tay in part because Tay didn't know how to pace himself.
Right, he got drunk on the first night.
At the wedding, he got drunk on the first night.
No, that's bad etiquette.
That's like going to a pride celebration and getting blackout drunk on the first night and missing the rest of it.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's basically what it is.
People are going to look down on you if you do that.
That's fair. And to be fair, it is supposed to be like, I think they said it's like a 3 or 4 day event, right? So
3-day event.
3-day event. So yeah, you can't get wasted the first night. That's just not something you do. Now, obviously, he didn't get wasted the first night because he's celebrating. He got wasted the first night because his wife left him and his business is failing. And then that's why he's really fucked up. But
which, to be fair, I don't blame him.
Right. So there's obviously, but Perrin obviously doesn't know that. So, well, no, that's not true. Perrin knows about, I think, the wife leaving him, right?
I believe Perrin
I
knows
think
about
that's
the
what he
wife
says
leaving
right
him.
here.
I
He's like,
don't think Perrin knows about the businesses are having trouble.
right, because he said, "Oh yeah, the wife's off the market," kind of thing, or like she's not in the picture anymore. So he's fair game, is what I think he tells Mon, and she's like, "Okay," like
Sure.
she's like, "I guess I don't care."
So let's talk about Vel, because Vel
Yes,
has a really interesting conversation with Mon here. And I also do want to bring up specifically, because it's going to be really important to me in the finale. Vel and Mon are having a conversation here that they've hung back and they are in this. Neither of them seems very relaxed. Neither of them seems at ease. They are both in a situation they don't want to be in. They are both in a
right,
situation they did not choose. The pen in that, we will come back to that in episode 12. But she's also been estranged from Cinta.
right,
And she keeps trying to justify this with like, well, it was never going to be perfect. Honestly, it was never even going to be good, but like sure it's what works for
because
her.
it seems like it's been like almost a year since they've seen each other.
She kind of implies it's been a while. It's been almost a
Right.
year since they've seen each other. Once again, we really needed more. We needed more context to make this work. We desperately needed more about their relationship and more context as to their
Yeah.
relationship, particularly given the gap between, because they're going to go another year without seeing each other
Right.
for reasons we won't get into, but we needed more.
Yeah.
I like what we have. I think it gives good context, but yeah, this is another you can see the scars on the bone
Yeah.
situation where it needed more of it. So Clay and the switchboard.
Okay.
I think this is here. I didn't write it down, but I read something really cool about it in the intervening time that I forgot to add in my notes. So I'm just going to drop it here. We're not going in scene
Any
order
particular
anyway.
order? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, firstly, one from the trivia guide, quote, Clea Markey's fractal radio in the back room of Luthen's galley, partly inspired by an old telephone operator's switchboard, end quote. I actually read an interview with the woman who plays Clea Markey, Elizabeth.
Delau?
Yes, Elizabeth Dulau. So I was reading an interview where Elizabeth Dulau, who plays Clea Markey, actually talked about how she got like a kid's radio, like a build your own radio kit, and built her own radio.
Oh, okay.
She didn't build this,
Right.
but like as
Obviously.
part of preparing to play Clea, she built her own radio.
That's kind of cool.
So Mon and Tay having this conversation. Mon, bless her heart, is trying to take accountability to be like, oh no, no, it's totally me. I've been ducking you. I'm so sorry. Like trying to soothe his injured man feelings. And Tay's over here like, I don't feel appreciated by the rebellion for the huge risk that I am taking. And I'm like, I get you are having the most stressful weekend of your life, but I need you to shut the hell up.
Right. And she also, I feel for Ron in this sense too, because she's just kind of like, I'm literally sending my child off to be married as like a child bride. Like, I've got other problems right
I
now.
have
Like,
bigger problems than you.
right. Now, to be fair, he did clean up her financial situation. That would have gotten her in a lot of trouble. So I do think she is being slightly ungrateful, only because it's a lot of risk to him. And what she was doing is very, very illegal. And
Well,
so,
yeah, and I think she is like part of the interesting thing about Mon's character, particularly when she's dealing with someone like Tay, is she's overwhelmed.
yeah,
And we see this with Lita too, that if she was able to focus on her rebellion stuff or her daughter, she would be able to make headway. But both of them are suffering because she can't focus
she
her
can't
full
focus
attention.
on one thing. Yeah.
She really needs, this may be come up later in the series, she really needs to focus on one thing to excel at it. I do think the Clea sequence is a little bit later than I said it was, because one of my notes is Coruscant establishing shots rule.
Oh, there you
And I
go.
think I'm referring to the shot of it sweeping down to show her like arriving at the shop.
Okay.
But no matter,
But
we
no
move
matter.
on.
Yeah.
So Luthen is definitely going to kill this dude.
I love how Luthen's go-to though is like there's even a slight remote problem with someone. It's like, maybe we should take them out. Like it's like,
Maybe we should kill him.
yeah, because we don't have any. He doesn't even think about it either. He's just kind of like, oh, is there an issue with Tay? Okay, great.
Well, when you're Luthen Rail, you kind of have to.
Yeah, it
Like
makes sense.
the level of treason that he's doing, that yeah, you've got to
No,
kill
yeah.
anybody that even remotely could be a weak link. Mon will bring this up in episode 9, but we'll get there when we get there. But the interesting thing is that even Mon, even at this point, really does not want to get her hands dirty. she doesn't understand like the cost of rebellion. She doesn't understand what that is because she doesn't have to see it. Most of the lives that are lost for the rebellion, she doesn't have to see.
Right.
Which I think even at this moment where she's like, no, 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 I'll figure something out. I'll talk my way out of it. She's trying to be a politician.
And yeah, no one's this close to her either that she ever has to deal with. So like, because this is essentially, everybody keeps joking about it, but like he's kind of like a schoolboy crush, right? Like it's like the thing that she was very interested in him at a young age, probably at some point. They're childhood friends. And there might have been some kind of romance at some point, but no longer, right? Because she's with Perrin and he's with his wife and it's whatever. But yeah, she's like, no, I'll handle it. He's my friend. He's my, confidant thing. Like I'll take care of it. And Luthen's like, okay, wink, wink, wink. Like, yeah, I'm sure you will. I gotcha. And then
Uh,
no, but he's not gonna wait around.
my next note is that, oh, Perrin's actually really good at speaking too. He
I
can make
want
a
yeah.
speech when he wants to.
That's right. Well, he has different skills, right? Like his skills, like public speaking clearly runs in the family, but it's also kind of like his skills are more like social skills.
Yes, this is something that is dealt with a lot in The Mask of Fear, which I highly recommend reading that will provide a lot of important context for this season.
Yeah,
That, yeah, he also has a different set of skills, and we'll see it later in the season too.
right. He's a good
But
talker.
he's a good talker, he's good socially, he knows
Yep.
what to say and when to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And also his advice that he gives, because he gives this basically father of the bride speech. And his advice, which is basically things are gonna suck, and as things suck, take the moments of good where you can find them, take the moments of joy where you can find them. On the surface, not terrible advice. In this context, it tells a lot more about his relationship than I think he wants to, but also sort of explains why Perrin is the way he is. Because Mon's miserable all the time because her life sucks.
No, for sure.
And like, it's about the whole thing with the Jedi is about finding balance, right? You find balance, you find your peace. Neither of these people is particularly balanced. Mon is too on the scale of worrying too much about everything and being overwhelmed by everything. And Perrin's on the scale of ignoring it.
Perrin just wants to have a good time. He is just like, things might suck, but I've got my Chandril and wine or whatever it is they drink, right? Like, he's like, okay, I'm always gonna find time to be social, time to have a good time. Like, I don't want to be miserable like my wife. Like,
There's a line that Jen Erso says in Rogue One, because I did, in fact, after watching the last 3 episodes of Andor, then watch Rogue One.
okay,
We'll talk about it. But there's a line that Jen says in Rogue One where Saw challenges her, you can stand to see Imperial banners reign above the galaxy. And Jen replies, you don't notice them if you don't look up.
don't.
And I think with Perrin, I think that also applies to him, rephrased as, you don't see them if you don't look down.
And I think also Perrin represents that person, right? During fascism. It's the person who just turns their head and doesn't really care because it doesn't really affect them if they're rich, or they're powerful.
No, you're rich. You're getting away
Right.
with it.
You don't really care because it's not affecting you as much.
Yep. And you're not involved in politics, so you're not making yourself a target.
Right.
You're just kind of doing your rich thing. It's those senators we see in The Mandalorian season 3. The ones who are like, oh, is it the New Republic now? Are we not the Empire now?
Right.
Oh, I guess. We can never tell because nothing ever changes for us.
Section 4, Imperials arrive. On Minerau, Kellen, Beela's father, meets the Ferrix crew in the wheat fields to discuss the details of the Imperial inspection. Kellen believes the Empire needs their cooperation and won't crack down harshly. Brasso shares that Talia thinks that they'll be okay, but Bix is skeptical. Later, Wilman and Beela share a heartfelt moment together before Imperial inspectors arrive and visit the general store. Outside, while Bix is preparing some equipment, Imperial officer Kroll questions and tries to flirt with her. To shut him down, she lies about having a husband off-world, and Brasso interrupts them, and Kroll leaves without further incident. That night, Kellen informs the Ferrix group that the Imperials will be leaving to another section soon. Bix grows anxious, and Kellen warns that the Imperials have been arresting people trying to flee.
Do you have any notes on actors for this section?
You know what's funny is I didn't, but I'll just mention them real quick.
Well, I have two. I have
okay.
two that really want to shout out these 2 actors.
Okay.
Ryan Pope is playing Kellen.
That was the
he
one I
is
was
a
gonna do,
TV
yep.
that guy. The other one that I wanted to especially shout out, because I am going to say very mean things about his character, is I have to give props to Alex Waldman, who plays Lieutenant Kroll, for playing just one of the biggest garbage pieces of shit in the history of Star Wars and doing it so effectively well. Like, he's not a bad looking guy in real life.
Right.
Like, if you look at photos of him on IMDb, he looks like just a normal dude. But the way he plays Kroll makes his face punchable. Like, I want to punch this character in the face. So good work, Alex Waldman. You understood the assignment to make this man fucking detestable, basically from the minute we see him.
And I love that. Well, I don't want to say too much, but this is really good setup. That's all I'm gonna
Yeah,
say.
we'll talk
That's all
about
I'm gonna say.
we'll talk about this the when we get down to the scene, but yes, it's
This is
if
fantastic
you've
setup.
if
That's all I'm gonna
you've
say.
lived through an experience like this or you're familiar with how this happens, this you clocked what was happening in this. That's what I'm going to say for now till we get down to that scene. So I like how Kellen does seem to have their backs in this, and
Right.
that's going to be important to understanding episode 3, that Kellen is doing all he can to like get them information, figure it out, work with them,
Right.
keep them safe. Like he really does like the Ferrix crew and want to keep them safe.
Right. And they establish that like in this scene, he's like the Empire already knows that they use non-visa workers, right? Like
Right.
they do this anyway. This is just something that the planet wide they need it. They need the wheat for the Empire. So they don't really look too closely at who is legal and who is not legal, right? Because they're like,
Which is a
we
real
just
thing
need
that
them.
happens in real life is when
Right.
you look at immigration policy, a lot of times like you will have a government that will say on one hand like, oh, undocumented immigrants, they are the worst, yada
Right.
yada yada, they're all horrible, we should deport all of them, etc., etc., except their economy kind of relies on them, so they also have to be really careful about appealing to their rabid anti-immigrant base while also making sure their economy doesn't collapse, because they're not going to want to hire workers that they can't. God forbid they have to pay workers a fair wage.
Right.
God forbid they can't exploit people in under these systems to do really menial labor and really physically painful and uncomfortable labor for the pennies they need to scrape by to survive. God forbid. Nope, we're going to talk about how undocumented workers are bad while at the same time exploiting them for labor. Subtlety is for cowards. I just want to point that out about this entire subplot. Subtlety is for cowards.
I feel like there's one of these in every arc.
There are two separate things in every arc that I clocked, which is the subtlety is for cowards plot line
Hmm.
and the one scene that's going to be really hard to talk about. And basically every arc has one. And by about the third arc, I was starting to identify, yes, this is the scene that will cause a lot of rancid takes on social media this week.
Yeah.
Whew boy. I found it interesting. It's been 10 years since the last audit.
Right. They've been letting this go on that
They've been letting this
long.
go on. They haven't checked. And it also kind of implies there's not any like standard here.
Right, because if you remember what I told you at the beginning of this arc was that this was the 15th anniversary of the Empire. So that means
Correct.
that they really only checked 5 years in and they were like, okay, like this seems fine. You guys do your own thing, you know? And then they just kind of let them be for the last 10 years. And now it's kind of all only becoming an issue now. And it's just because the rampant, growth of the Empire is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's what's leading up to obviously the next final 5 years of the Empire, really.
Well, they're also like, they've been doing this for 15 years now, so they're kind
Yeah.
of getting comfortable. We are just now seeing rebel cells start to pop up in any meaningful way. Like you said, at this present moment, the Grand Inquisitor is dying.
Right.
So Ezra's broadcast is currently happening, like the broadcast he does from Lothal. So we're not anywhere close to the Empire actually being in a crisis, and they really won't be in a crisis until the Death Star blows up.
Right. It's not, we're leading up to that, but it's just now it's just kind of starting. This is just the start of
The
basically.
Empire has won basically every major engagement they have had with a rebel force. They are not worried.
Right.
And once they get the Death Star operational, they will never have to worry about rebellion again.
That's true.
Because fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station. I should rewatch that movie if I have time tonight.
There you go.
I just watched Rogue One last night, so
So you've already
maybe
finished
I
the
should.
real prequels of Star
The
Wars.
prequel to Star Wars. I love how young and naive Wilman is.
That he's
It's so funny
that he's able to find love anywhere.
that he finds his girlfriend and then she's like, "Oh, but what if you leave? Oh, I'll come back for you. We'll always come." Dude, what are you like 19?
I know, I kind of love it.
Seriously?
Also,
Okay.
I love that Bila is that stereotypical like farm girl who's never left her town kind of thing. And the second she meets an interesting man that's just different, she falls in love with him.
She's like,
And then,
"Oh, a
yep,
break from the monotony."
exactly,
Yeah, I
exactly.
struggled to think with Mina Rao, like how could we have expanded this out to be a potentially a full season spent on Mina Rao in the same way we spent it on Ferrix. And I do think Bila and Kellen are two characters that I think we would have gotten a lot more from. And Bila, it would have been nice for her to have some more depth to her.
I
I
think
think
so
she's a
because
decent
she is
enough
pretty.
character
Yeah,
as it is, but as it stands, pretty flat.
she's a one-dimensional character. She really is.
She's a pretty one-dimensional
She's
character.
just love interest for Willman for the day. Like it
Yeah.
really is all that it is. I
So we
mean,
can add a little bit of stakes, and also like it can be a tragedy when he has to leave again because he's
sure.
kind of starting to build a life here.
But what's interesting is like had this been a full season, right? We could have seen that love grow from the first episode all the way to the end to where when they do inevitably separate, it would have been super tragic, and then you would have had everybody being like, "No, they're meant to be together. Why did we break them up?" You know, whatever, right? Like there, I could already
All the
see
people
that.
online
Yeah.
who are the romance girlies can be
Yes.
sad about the fact
Exactly.
that the romance had a tragic ending, and then they will debate if the romance book could actually be a romance book because
Sure.
there is much debate, Bradley, in book spaces. You don't have to live in them, but I do. There is much debate over whether or not a romance novel needs a happily ever after to qualify,
To
or whether
qualify.
to qualify as a romance, to be marketed as a romance,
Uh-huh.
you up by some people in this debate, which I am not a
Sure.
part of, you have to have a happily ever after. That is a debated, a generally debated rule.
So is it a buddy comedy if they don't stay together at the end? Like I don't
It
understand.
is a
Like,
tragedy if they don't stay together at the end.
oh my God, we're just semantics at this point. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's all book talk is, Bradley. That's all book talk and threads and whatever is. It's just bullshit semantic arguing over the definitions of tiny, minuscule fucking words. Your life is so much easier not having to deal with that.
Here's the thing. I have faith that Wilman and Bila will end up together by the end of this arc. I have
I
faith that that
Oh
will
yeah.
happen.
No, totally. They're not telegraphing with a giant red flag that this is
Yeah.
going to end in tragedy.
No,
Well,
the
and
sheer fact that she said that. I mean,
part of it is Wilman's young. Wilman's young,
well,
he's got to learn
yeah,
lessons, he's got growing to do.
sure.
When the Imperial officers enter the store, one of them asks if they have Pizzos. We remember Pizzos, they are a legal stimulant in the Star
Okay.
Wars universe, and they are unique to Andor. We have
Okay.
never seen them otherwise. I also love that Kellen's kind of pumping them for info in the store in the guise of casual conversation. Again, note Kellen is
Right.
using his privilege in a really interesting way. That he's getting information that Brasso can't get, but Brasso's standing right there so he can hear all of it.
Exactly. He's like, so where are you guys headed next? Like, what's the next stop on your list? Like,
All casual because they're going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
trust him because he's supposed to be there.
Yeah, he's the store owner. He's
He's
allowed
the
to be
store
there. Yeah.
owner. He's a citizen. We
That's
can
right.
we can totally have conversation with him. Yeah, we can just tell him things because obviously, why wouldn't he be on their side?
Sure.
Hmm? It's
He's
a
like what's his
really
face? The mole guy in Kenobi. Like he drives around and is like, "Oh yeah, the Empire's great." Like,
well, he's pretending this like the mole
right,
guy.
right.
He's the opposite of the mole
The opposite of
guy.
the mole guy, right?
He's the
Well,
opposite of the mole guy.
he's what the Empire thinks the mole guy is.
Yes, when oh boy. I keep forgetting about that fucking mole man. I should rewatch Obi-Wan
I
Kenobi.
was
It's
gonna
been a
say
hot minute since
yeah,
I've
it's been a
watched it.
minute.
Adria Arjona acting in this scene
Oh, okay.
where Lieutenant Kroll comes up and it becomes increasingly apparent over the first few lines that he is starting to flirt with her and then get
Hmm.
really pushy. Her acting in this scene is painful to watch in the best ways because you can watch Bix get more and more uncomfortable and start to panic.
Right.
You can actually watch the barely contained panic on Audra's face.
I was literally pulling the images for this episode for the our YouTube and stuff like that, and actively doing that while I was like just doing nothing today. And I could, as I was going through the screen caps, I was literally like, you could see her face go from like she's doing that fake smile thing, like being
Mhm.
nice to somebody, to like it just like slowly turns to pain. Like it's just very like, ugh, like I'm uncomfortable being
Yeah,
here.
I'm really
Get away from
uncomfortable and
me. Like, yeah,
I'm in danger. I'm in danger because there is a man here and I have said no in a pretty clear and concise way,
right,
using one of the only tactics that works on men because they don't respect a woman's autonomy to say no. There needs to be another man in the picture before no becomes an option. But that's not working because he's still pushing, and oh
right.
no, this is a problem. It's physically painful too. Like, or I won't say physically painful, emotionally painful for me. I've been in this situation. I'll say that. Like, that is something I will say is I have been in situations, particularly when I was in a lot of spaces around older drunk gay men
Mm,
and I was younger, like I was in college.
yeah,
So I'm 22, 23 years old. You would get these men occasionally who would be very pushy.
right.
And I have used lines like pretending I have a boyfriend when I don't. And it is a very terrifying experience to gradually start to realize, oh, this guy's not taking no for an answer. I need to
Right.
be very careful about where I leave my drink.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's improved in the community at all.
It has not, and I'm calling it out for a specific reason. My fellow gay men, some of you people need to learn how to take no for an answer. Really got to learn this. I understand you think you're exempt from the patriarchal bullshit because you are gay men. I promise you, you are not. You can you be as gay as you want. You still need to address this because some of you badly. But yeah, no, this scene was really uncomfortable to watch. And as a viewer, I had my suspicions about where this plot line was going to go, even just from watching this sequence and having been in positions like this. We have gotten heavy enough in this particular scene.
But thankfully, Daddy Brasso comes to save the day.
Thankfully, and this is another thing with like if you see someone who is clearly uncomfortable and you know them,
Right,
women will do this. Women will do this for each other to where you'll see a woman who's in a clearly uncomfortable situation and they will extract them from that
right,
situation. If you are like Brasso and your friend is in this situation, as a man, this is something you can do is you can interrupt it
right,
and you can like pull them away or like, hey, let's go over here, or I need to talk to you about this over here.
right.
Like, this is something you can do to help if a woman is in this situation. So good on Brasso for intervening and putting a stop to this because it was not going anywhere good.
No, it wasn't.
And it will not go anywhere good. Surprisingly, that was not the scene that's going to be really uncomfortable to talk about in this arc. It will get worse. But that's a problem for next week.
That's right.
I do really like how I keep forgetting her name, Talia.
Talia. Hmm.
I like how Talia is also stepping up because one of the things they're talking about is like, what do we do if the Imperial show up and asks who lives here? And Talia immediately, without question, I will tell them that I live here
Right.
because it's registered to me and I'm a citizen.
Yep,
Like,
it's my house. Hmm.
so she's using her privilege as a citizen to help these undocumented people that she lives with,
Right.
which is also very cool of her. I do believe that is everything for this episode.
And like I said last week, the director and the writer is the same, Ariel Kleinman, and writer Tony Gilroy. So it'll be the same for a while. But
It'll be the
just
same for a
thought
while.
I'd mention it anyway.
It'll be the same for a while. Alrighty, well, Bradley, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
Final thoughts in this episode were I think I liked the wedding section more. And I think honestly, as much as I like the idea of mixing like the episode, like the arcs and stuff like that, I don't know. I feel like I almost would have preferred instead of doing 3 episode arcs like every week, I think I might have preferred doing like one episode was the whole episode was the wedding. One episode was the whole Mineral stuff. One episode was the whole Cassian stuff with the Deedra stuff maybe mixed in. You know what I mean? Like I think I would have liked it more separated and then just watched it all in one big chunk because I think there's something about like the sprinkling of the Mineral that I don't like. Like it just feels like there's a lot of mini scenes and I don't love the jumping back and forth because it kind of takes me out of it. Versus like when we're in the wedding stuff, I'm like, whoa, the wedding stuff is good. Like more of that. I want to keep seeing the story continue, but then we have to take a break and go to like the vignettes of Cyril at the fucking Bureau of Standard. Like I don't care about that scene. Like we don't really even need that scene, honestly.
Yes,
like,
we do. It's fucking hilarious. It's important to Cyril's character.
It's important to Cyril's character. I agree, but I also think that in the context of like just this arc, it just doesn't really matter as much as some of the other stuff. I think some of the other plot lines are a little bit more important, and so I like that they set up like the Gorman stuff last week. Do I need a little bit more of that Deedra stuff? That Deedra scene could have been last week's episode. With her and Pargas. That could have just been the end cap of that because it was her coming back to Coruscant and being like, okay, we just did the Gorman project. Now what do you think? Kind of thing. The download. Didn't really need it in this episode. I think we could have saved it, but that's just I'm nitpicking, obviously. What about you?
My final thoughts on this episode were it was a decent episode of TV. It's not going to rank down as one of my favorite episodes of Andor, which sometimes episodes like this need to exist. And they're also trying to cram a lot of ideas and character development into a much shortened period of time. So I think this episode really props up the first and last episodes. It is very much a moving pieces into place for the third episode. Because a lot of the banger stuff that's going to happen in this arc is going to happen in the third episode. And we see that time and time and time again in the first 2 arcs, I will say, fall into that. The second 2 arcs proceed to hit the gas pedal so hard it rips through the bottom of the car and never lets it off. The back half of this season is an absolutely incredible thrill ride from beginning to end with absolutely no downers. This one's still falling into the trap of the original arcs of the original season, to where we have a good introduction, we have a basically okay second episode, and then everything has a big old conclusion in the
finale next week.
Yep, which would be week to week, but they dropped it as blocks of 3 episodes, and I'm so tired, and I want my Tuesdays back. You can find a whole bunch of TV shows that Bradley has worked on, including such shows as Married to Medicine, some of the later seasons, The Circle, season 5 and 6, King's Court, which is almost airing. You can find them on places like Bravo and Peacock, and just Google them. They'll tell you where to watch it. So if you like reality TV, please watch those. We need to keep Bradley employed. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice. That is a TTRPG actual play podcast set in the High Republic era. You can also find queer crime thriller mystery stories that I write. Those are called Beach House Studios. You can find, and I'm going to have to practice doing this in a much shorter. You can find books 1 and 2 available for purchase on Amazon, Kobo, and BarnesandNoble.com. Book 3 is releasing on May 31st. You will only be able to acquire it on Amazon for the first 3 months of its release, but you will be able to get it with Kindle Unlimited. After that, it will go wide. Run our socials. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze.
That's
And
right.
I
Let's
know
get
Bradley
into
probably
it.
wants to go to bed at a reasonable hour so he can get up and yell at his PAs. I'm just kidding. Bradley would never yell at his PAs. He's good at his job. Allegedly. I don't actually know. He could be terrible.
That's true.
Sound off in the comments if you work for Bradley. If you work for Bradley, you should not be listening to this show.
Yeah, there you go.